Good afternoon. I'd like to call the informational meeting to order, and what a beautiful fall day. I hope everyone has their leaves raked. I got some of mine done earlier today. We'll start with our City Council staff report.
Good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. Just a couple of things to let you know that items number 31 and item number 36 have had some updates to the agenda as of today. So if you looked at those earlier than today, there's been some changes in some information provided to you and to the public. In addition, item number 39 has been requested to be deferred by the petitioner, and Mr. Cooper will talk to you about that later at 7 o'clock, but it will be deferred until November 5th, as long as the council acquiesces. In addition, just to remind you, there's a fiscal committee meeting today after the informational on the $5 million redevelopment bond, and that is all.
Thank you very much. Let's see. Now we'll have an update on the Lewis and Clark bid update from Kevin Smith and Steve Burian, please.
Good afternoon. Kevin Smith with the Office of Public Works. Steve Burian wasn't able to be here today, so I'm flying solo. Last week, the Lewis and Clark Rural Water System and its engineering staff convened a peer review group to look over the project, the bids, and other alternatives. And what they've recommended is essentially 4 alternatives to look at moving forward. The first would be essentially to award the bid and try and stay under South Dakota law and change order out up to 5% of the project. So to go from $142 million, try and find a 5% savings and still award the bid. Alternative number 2 would require rejecting the bids and rebidding the treatment plant in the near term within, let's say, just a few months with some smaller changes that would hopefully save maybe in the neighborhood of up to $15 million. Alternative number 3 would require rejecting the bids and phasing some of the additional capacity improvements, essentially not building a 45 million gallon per day treatment plant, something much smaller, but staying true more or less to the original design. And the fourth alternative would consist of something a little less orthodox in terms of the original plan of the project, which would include possibly a small treatment plant near Beersford, a small treatment plant near the T Reservoir site, and then the City of Sioux Falls receiving a portion of our reserve capacity in raw water to our treatment plant. So those are the 4 alternatives. The Lewis and Clark board did meet last Thursday. They voted to delay any action on the bid until the October board meeting because the low bidder, C.D. Smith, agreed to extend the bid for an additional 30 days. So Lewis and Clark's engineers will come back to the construction committee of Lewis and Clark on Monday the 15th, approximately, well, 2 weeks from today, with hopefully some additional information that will make that decision on the 25th a little easier for the board.
Councilor Litz.
Yes, Kevin, I read their weekly update, and I was a little bit intrigued about the state statutes, and I don't know whether you would be the person to do it or perhaps our city attorney, on the limits for rebidding. What was that all about? I guess I didn't really understand it. They said that they were thinking about looking at places, maybe value engineering or just shaving down the bid, whatever was agreeable with the state statutes. Is there state statutes on how much you can drop a bid?
There's state statutes regarding change orders. I think one of the issues that should get a little more discussion is it the intent of change order law to apply that directly, immediately toward a bid that was higher than expected. But Gail, I guess you can follow up on that.
Well, I haven't looked at that particular statute, and I'd be glad to do that for you, Councilman Litz, and get back to you on it. My understanding of change orders, I guess in the past, has been they're implemented when an unexpected issue arises after a bid is accepted, but I haven't looked at that definition in some time. I could certainly look at the statute and get back to you on
But
that.
I'd appreciate that, because my understanding was change order 2 was after the project was underway. And, we're certainly not close to that at this point.
I think that would certainly draw some questions from the other bidders in the process, knowing that the low bid was $142 million and the next high was, I think, let's see here, $146 million. That's pretty close, and that second bidder may question exactly what you are today.
Any other questions? Sorry, Councilor Stagers.
Yeah, Kevin, you mentioned the last option, maybe a small plant, Beersford, and maybe a small one at T. I don't know if you can say very much more about that, but would the Beersford plant kind of treat the water that would be going to Hull or into Iowa, or what? Do you have any insight as to what they plan to do?
That's strategically, that plant being much smaller, and by that I mean a few million gallons per day, would be sized to meet the requirements or meet the needs of the Iowa members that are off that line. So, as well as some of the South Dakota members down near there, Centerville, Beersford, certainly, yes.
And then T, what would that, they'd be serving tea and
Well,
Harrisburg?
the T, there is a reservoir site that Lewis and Clark plans to build 2 15 million gallon ground reservoirs on right now. One of the things being discussed in that alternative would be a small plant there that could provide treated water to the Minnesota members, Worthington, Rock County Rural Water, City of Laverne, and also T in Harrisburg. So that plant would also tie into our distribution system, but I think more importantly, that alternative would bring maybe 15 million, 17 million gallons of raw water directly to the Sioux Falls treatment plant. So this is, I would say, the most, alternative 4 is the most creative of all 4. And I do think that does deserve some additional consideration, because if it, and we don't have dollar amounts on these yet, but our goal is to find the most cost-effective solution, not just for the entire project to keep it under the federal ceiling, but the treatment plant, because that's a huge financial investment for the city of Sioux Falls.
Now, you just mentioned, it's hard to really have any numbers on any of this stuff, but did anybody give any rough figures for that 4th alternative or not?
No, not at this point. That was really looked at from an engineering and water treatment standpoint, what could be done. The next thing that Lewis and Clark's engineers are working on are more, hopefully well-defined numbers with all 4 of those alternatives.
Councilor Litz.
Were these big reservoirs always part of the plan? Because I've gotten some comments lately about the size of these, and I was unaware of them. And some folks are thinking that it's going to be a pretty big configuration sitting out in the country in some places.
Well, that's a very good question. Is yes, they were originally considered as a full build-out for the system. That if you're going to design a 45 million gallon per day treatment plant, you do need that kind of storage to meet your ultimate distribution system needs. But if we would look at scaling it back to, instead of building it at 45 million gallons per day, to build it, I don't know, half that size, and then as needs increase, expand it in the future, you would have to question whether or not that much storage is necessary at the outset.
Is it true they were 80 feet tall?
I don't recall the exact height of them, but they were significant structures. And these are ground storage, not elevated storage.
Any other questions?
My plan would be to come back and brief everyone in 2 weeks after the construction committee meets again on the 15th. So we'll certainly be hearing more about this from Lewis and Clark, but that's the next critical date for us is October 15th.
Okay, thank you. And so we'll assume that we will see you on the 29th of October at our informational, probably?
Well, I will work my way into the schedule
All right.
somehow.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for your work.
Certainly.
At this point, we'll have an update from the Audit Committee on the Convention Center audit report, please, and by Mr. Otzel. And thank you for being with us today.
Yes, thank you. Rich Oaksel, Lead Internal Auditor, City of Sioux Falls. Just for the information of the viewing public, these audit reports, after they're presented to the City Council at the informational, we put them on the city website under the City Council, and there should be a subsection of internal audit, so anybody watching can get our reports once they're presented to the City Council. First of all, I'd like to express our appreciation to Mr. Bill Bennett, the General Manager of the Sheraton, and his staff for their cooperation during this audit. I know they obviously weren't happy about losing the management agreement, but they are very courteous to us, and all the records were in very good order. You should have received an electronic copy on Friday. I emailed that to you. If you need a hard copy, I have a few available, if you'd like to see that. Okay. On that first page, you can see the bottom there, the results. The management company complied with the terms of the agreement. And before I get into that, let me just say that this was a special request audit. Back in August, the City Attorney's Office approached the Audit Committee with this request. This wasn't on our 2007 annual audit program. However, we always try to put some time in the annual audit program for special situations like this. There were four main objectives for the audit. One was to see if the revenue due to the city was coming in like it was supposed to, and we concluded that the city was receiving all the revenue due. We received revenue from the food and beverage and also from the room rentals at the convention center. The next item was that 4% hotel room charge that has been discussed previously. That 4% charge was intended for the promotion of the convention center and for tourism in general. That was a negotiated item. It wasn't a tax, so it could be waived when they were trying to attract a group to the convention center. They could negotiate that item, and they had communicated this back to the city back in 2003. We looked at detailed invoices of what they were spending this 4% on, and we found everything was in order, that they were spending it appropriately. We also went further when we looked at the reasonableness of what they were reporting as being collected to see if that was reasonable. We found the amounts that they're collecting to be reasonable. We compared it to the lodging tax, which is put on all the hotel and motel rooms in the City of Sioux Falls. So we had confidence that it was being collected properly, it was being spent properly, and more often than not, it was being collected about over 70% of the time that they were collecting that. So it wasn't waived that often. The third item was a loan repayment to the Sioux Falls Convention Visitors Bureau. Back when the convention center opened up in, I think, 1997, there was a $300,000 loan that was fronted to the management company for startup costs, and they had 15 years to pay that back. They are current on that loan, and there was no problems with that. They're making their payments every year. And the fourth item was something that the city attorney looked into was computer software that they use for booking events. That became an issue while Global Spectrum and other companies wanted to, were submitting RFPs and that sort of thing. Our conclusion was that the city does not own the software. The Sheraton asserts that they own the software. We found no evidence that the city had purchased that. But due to the legal nature of this issue, we did not reach a conclusion on who exactly owns the software, and we discussed this obviously with the city attorney. At this time, are there any questions about this?
Councilor Stagers?
Yes, Rich, you said you took a look at the lodging tax that was brought in. Can you get the figures for exactly how much lodging tax the Sheraton submitted to the state, or how does that work?
Well, we'd have to ask the state for that information because we don't have that information.
Okay.
But obviously, the figures we have are what's reported citywide, and we put that in the appendix of the report. But we'd have to make a request to the state, I suppose Department of Revenue or something like that, to find that out.
So they would have that detailed information?
I would assume they would have that. I don't know if there would be if they can provide that quickly, if there's a charge for that. But no, we don't normally get that information. We just get a check normally from the state for the lodging tax.
So may I assume you just went ahead and made an assumption about what % of the lodging tax came from the Sheraton and then tried to match it
Yeah,
up?
we tried to do some reasonableness figures. On the last page of the appendix of the report, we kind of detailed what we did there. We compared what the Sheraton was bringing in with that 4%, and if the lodging tax had been 4%, it's a 1% tax, and we assumed, we just kind of multiplied that by 4. We looked at, compared to, the citywide. At the very bottom of that appendix, it says the Sheraton rooms represent about 5% of the available rooms in the city. And so we were able to make some assumptions there. We were basically just trying to see if what was being reported was reasonable. We concluded that it was. And we also looked at the detail. We looked at the invoice to what they're spending that money on, and everything looked perfectly appropriate for promotion of the convention center. So we had no problems with that whatsoever.
If I could just ask, that 1% fee, or whatever you want to
The
call it.
lodging tax, are you talking about?
No, the one for the convention center.
Yeah,
That extra 1%.
It was 3%, and then it was raised to 4%, and it's not a tax. It was a fee.
Yeah.
That was part
How
of the
was that
agreement.
reflected on customers' bills? Did you find out?
It would be a line item, but if sometimes people would complain about that, and they had the discretion to remove that, but they would usually remove that when they were trying to attract business. If they're trying to attract a group, that would be one item you negotiate, like with other things that you would negotiate. And they were free to do that according to the management agreement. And they had communicated this back in 2003 to the city that they were doing this. So.
As far as an individual room charge, did it just say 1% fee authorized by the city, or did you happen to get into something like
I didn't know
that?
what the exact wording was, but it would be, I'm sure it would be a line item, just like the state sales tax and the lodging tax would be line items. Yeah. Yes. But we found that it looked like, at least I think in one year, that they collected that about 73% of the time. So most of the time it was being collected. Okay.
Any other questions?
I have a couple more comments
Excuse me,
after the questions. Yes. If there's no more questions, I'd just like to say that while we were doing the audit, we met with Mr. Scott Kavanaugh. He is the general manager out there at the convention center now. He works for Global Spectrum. Had a good conversation with him. As we read the new agreement, it says that there's supposed to be an audit done every year. We propose that we will do that with your permission. And we'll probably meet with him before year end just to make sure that the way they're doing things is the way we interpret the agreement. And then at some point next year, after they've been in operation for a while, we'll do our annual audit. And then the other question that Mr. Bennett had for us, he's been very patiently waiting for his second quarter management fee. It's about $65,000. We haven't paid that yet. So I just like to tell the finance director we have no objection to paying that bill for $65,000. I'm sure we've been suspending that until the results of this audit, I assume. So, and that's Mr. Bennett has been very patient about that, and I'm sure he'd like his money. I have nothing else. Oh, by the way, on our agenda, we did say that we were going to do the third quarter activity report. We have asked to do that next week, with your permission.
That will be just fine.
Thank you.
We'll see you next Tuesday then.
Yes, thank you.
Okay? Thank you very much. At this point, we'll run through our committee reports, and we'll start with fiscal and Counselor Costello.
We will be meeting as soon as the conclusion of the informational meeting, and we'll talk about the proposed neighborhood redevelopment.
Okay. Land use, Counselor Litz, could you help on this?
No report at this time.
Okay. Public Services Committee, Counselor Staggers, would you have anything for us on that, in that area?
No report at this time.
Okay. Thank you. And then just a few odds and ends for open discussion before I just do a plug for more input for the Charter Revision Commission. First of all, I know that the council is pleased to have Fire and Rescue Chief Rick Larson back to work today. We are very pleased that he received a great news from his surgery, and so we welcome him back. Also, 5 of us were involved last week, at the end of the week, meeting with the South Dakota Transportation Commission, and I think that was a very worthwhile experience. We spent 2/3 of the day with them, and I believe that commission, state commission, had not been in Sioux Falls for 10 years, and so I thought it was, I'm sure I can say more than we really appreciated Commissioner Dick Gregerson inviting us to sit in on that meeting, which again, of course, is a public meeting, but I mean to especially invite us. And then I think the bus tour around the city to tour transportation projects was very helpful. And then we had lunch with them also. So that was a good day, I believe, for all of us. I hope they come back before 10 more years are up. Also, I wanted to tell you that Falls Park Overlook Cafe is now serving breakfast. I believe they open about 7:30 in the morning, and that's a fun place to eat. And again, for the viewing public, I'd like to remind all of you that starting tonight, October 1st, from 6 to 7:30 p.m. out at Kenny Anderson Community Center, the city will be receiving input on the Drake Springs design, and we encourage all of you to provide whatever input you can. And also that meeting will be held again tomorrow night, October 2nd, from 6 to 7:30 p.m. at Kenny Anderson Community Center, and as well as an open house all day tomorrow from 1 to 5 p.m. Also, for counselors, I'd like to remind you to place on your schedule that on October 11th, that's going to be the next Whittier neighborhood project regarding code enforcement and so forth, and our city attorney, Gary Colwell, will be present that night for a presentation. That meeting starts at 7 p.m. At Eastside Lutheran Church, which is our regular meeting spot there. Also, you all know that we will not be meeting next Monday because of Columbus Day, Native American Day, so we will all congregate again next Tuesday, October 9th. And several of the counselors were able to participate in the ribbon cutting at the Siouxland Health and Human Services ribbon cutting last week, and what a wonderful new facility for our city. And I am going to put one of these brochures in your mailbox. It was kind of a fun from a historical standpoint, was passed around at the ribbon cutting. It's the County and City Welfare Association annual 8th annual report from 1927. And so when you see that in your mailbox, just know that's just me giving you a little bit more reading material. And again, I would like to thank Councilor Jameson and Councilor Kavanaugh, and also our City Clerk Deborah Owen, who will be representing us in Aberdeen this week for the annual Municipal League annual meeting. And we appreciate the time that they are taking out of their busy lives to represent us in Aberdeen. And then last for me here anyway, the Charter Revision Commission again has had 2 meetings, and I would like to remind all of you in the community that the next 2 meetings will be October 11th, which is a Thursday, and also Thursday, October 18th, here in Carnegie Town Hall. Those meetings will take place at 3:30 p.m., and I encourage lots of good input on that important topic too. And I'd also like to encourage the counselors and other staff to give us to give that commission their best thoughts, because I think they're going to meet in October and November and later than that if necessary, but they welcome our input. And I have asked Deborah Owen, she had a few suggestions, very good suggestions, I think, for the Charter Revision Commission, and she's just going to share just a couple of her thoughts for suggestions, and then you just add anything else you'd like to add.
Thank you, Councilor Knudsen. There's just actually one thing in particular, and all it has to do with city elections. Last April, we had the largest turnout in history of the city of Sioux Falls. We had over 30,000 voters, and we had some consistent input, you would say, from citizens. And it had to do with the turnaround time for ballots and absentee voting and accommodating shut-ins and snowbirds. And so actually one is an ordinance that I'd ask you to take a look at down the road, and that would be to extend the runoff from 2 weeks to 3 weeks. in part because we don't really print the ballots until after we get the results, and by the time we turn that around and get those ballots ready for the public, there really isn't much time to send things out of state to the snowbirds or for those who are shut in, and then have them vote, and then return those ballots to the county auditor's office for counting before Election Day. So that would be one issue. And then the second one has to do with the charter, and that is by charter, we have the date for petitions from candidates being due to the city clerk's office is the fourth Friday preceding the election. And that's a pretty quick turnaround time, too, because we have the 5-day challenge for any other candidates who would want to challenge those petitions. And we've had actually a successful challenge not too long ago. The state law, however, has a different, they've changed theirs since the charter, and they've actually extended that petition period up into February, so that due date would be, I think it's the last Friday in February, and I'm just asking that that the charter revision would consider mirroring the state, so it would give us just a little bit more time to accommodate the challenge period. Also, with all of the new federal election rules with the auto marks, it gives us more time as election staff to reprogram all of those machines, especially for a citywide election or even for a citywide runoff. We just need a little bit more time, and that would just give us a longer time for absentee voting to encourage people to get out there and vote. And then, of course, for those who we have to mail the ballots out to the shut-ins or to the snowbirds, it would give us enough turnaround time to get those back in and get those important votes counted.
Thank you very much. I think those sound like very good suggestions. And would any of you have any thoughts on those suggestions at this point? Obviously, Deborah can share those with the Charter Revision Commission whenever she wishes to do that, but would any of you have any input for her on either one of those topics? Councilor Stager?
I was going to ask Deb, when do you plan to present that before the City Charter Commission?
Well, actually, I think there's supposed to be formal communication going out after I attended the last meeting, and actually you too, I remember seeing you there. There's supposed to be formal communication going out to the department heads, and when that happens, then we'll know that we can then ask to come before the Charter Revision Commission. So I believe that would be in the next few weeks.
Okay.
Any other open discussion items? Councilor Kavanaugh.
Well, I haven't, while we're on the subject of charter revision, I've not been able to attend any of their meetings. I hope to attend some in the near future, but I've been trying to keep up on it in the media. I noticed that their meeting last week contained a visit from Director Rowenhorst with regard to confusing language in the charter and proposals to change Section 5, which I believe is the finance section. It struck me that upon a question from one of the members of the commission, they asked what the council thought of these, and he said that Director Rowenhorst said that he hadn't heard of any disagreements from the council. I'd like to know when those proposed changes were brought before the council, because I don't remember seeing them.
Okay. I know that I was in on a discussion months and months ago about that, but Mr. Rowenhorst, would you be able to come forward and provide some clarification on this topic, please?
Jeanne Rowenhorst, Director of Finance. I've not ever brought an official document in front of the council of that nature. I didn't mean to be implying that the council should have known or that they agreed with anything. Essentially, has been no communication, to my knowledge.
So when do you intend to bring your proposed changes to the Charter Revision Commission?
I am supposed to have modified language at the October 18th meeting.
Would that be available to the council prior to the meeting?
I don't know. They had the same question asked of whether they could have it before the 18th meeting, and if I can get it done, I'll get it there. But the intent was to deliver it to the committee on the 18th and discuss it at probably a later meeting.
Thank you.
And Jeanne, I was thinking it was months ago, but I believe that I was vice chair at the time and Chairman Jameson. I believe that we were both sat in on it was just a part of a conversation about other topics as far as some of the inconsistency in the charter. as far as like in one place it's called major organizational units, and another place just organizational units. I just vaguely remember that conversation, so I know there's been that you've had a little discussion with a couple of us, but not extensive. So just sharing that with the other.
As I said, I've not had any official
yes
communication.
yes.
I'm sure I've talked about it. It's been something that's been kind of troubling me since I came here, trying to understand what they were talking about in the charter. And it's not been any secret that I've wanted to make changes to it.
Would there be any other questions on this topic? Okay, thank you. And again, I want to remind all of you that the meeting, the Charter Revision Commission meeting the other day, besides it having taken place here at Carnegie Town Hall, it is also we can watch the entire meeting through our new Granicus program, and so I would like to share that too. In fact, I had a call this morning from a former elected official regarding the Charter Revision Commission, and I was happy to hear that people are watching it and care enough to call me with their input. Any other open discussion items from any of you? I know I had a fairly long laundry list, but would any of you have anything like to share? Okay, with that, we are going to, I'm going to adjourn the informational for now, and the fiscal committee will go, sorry, I'm going a little too fast. Is Mr. Roenhorst, would you come forward again, sorry about my mistake, and would you provide a monthly city financial review for us? I was just getting too anxious to get outside in that beautiful weather.
This will be the review for the month of August. We're a little late on that. I think it was due to the councils. We were supposed to be on last week, and you had your tour of the landfill and that, so we backed it up 1 week. First thing I want to draw to your attention, though, everyone should have one of these at their place. This is the budget summary. The idea is that you should keep this with you for the next 18 months. Carry it around in your briefcase, because a large majority of questions you might have about the budget and how things work is in here. It's a very, very comprehensive summary of the city budget and what we're looking at for 2008. And also in the back of it is the ordinances to appropriate the necessary funds for the budget. So that document, I don't know if it'll be online this afternoon yet, but it will be online by tomorrow. It will be out on the internet, so everyone can see it. But it's really a very thorough summary of what's going on. A couple of other things I wanted to update you on before we actually talk about the financial statements. Last week we put out an RFP for the special assessment bonds for the arterial streets. And interestingly enough, we put it on the internet, and we're actually getting some hits on the internet over it. But we've got financial institutions in the city that will be looking at it. This is an RFP. It is not a bid, because in my visiting with different institutions around the city, some of them had different approaches that they wanted to take towards it, and we'll see what they propose for a structure and what they're going to do with it, and negotiate with somebody then once we identify who would be probably the best solution to what we want to do. Probably the biggest thing that will be different about it, or could be different, we're actually going to issue bond anticipation notes initially. Those bond anticipation, and if you want to, this RFP is on the internet, so you can pull it up if you want to see it. Bond anticipation notes will have a maturity of approximately 18 months. They'll mature sometime around, well, it might only be 12 months, sometime around October, excuse me, of 2008. At that time, under the ordinance that the council has passed, the city would be required to issue special assessment bonds to pay off the bond anticipation notes, and those bonds would be approximately 5 years, 5 to 7 year maturity. Some people have expressed interest in doing the bond anticipation notes only, and others have expressed doing the bond anticipation notes and the special assessment bonds in one transaction, and others have expressed an interest in doing only the bond anticipation notes, or only the special assessment bonds. Under the RFP, we will not consider special assessment bonds only. We will only be considering the bond, if they want to do a bond anticipation note only, or a bond anticipation note and the special assessment bonds in the same transaction. And we think that should work out pretty well. I think we're going to get some pretty good response on it. It's going to be interesting to see where, I think it's October 12th is when the bids are due in. Or they're not bids. I shouldn't use, it's not a bid. It's a request for proposal. And somewhere towards the end of October, we will then actually issue the bonds. So I don't know if there's any more questions on that. And then the other thing, we had a conference call this morning with our financial advisors, Doherty and Company. We are considering issuing the quality of life bonds. It looks like it probably is about as good a time as any. The market's obviously a little spooky with what's going on in the subprime lending part of the market, but so that tends to make the thing move around a little bit. But right now things look like it might not be a bad time, and I guess the real impetus behind it is we really don't see things improving any between now and March, which is basically the drop dead date. We need to be able to spend money on April 1st for the library is the big thing. Will be coming online at that point. And so we're looking at it. Probably we'll issue them this year yet. We could end up going into January if that's possible, but we're going to put all the paperwork together so that we're ready to essentially pull the trigger on the transaction, and most any time we could do it in a very short order. We do have some changes in that we have to take into account, primarily lending transactions that we have to update the POS for. And once we get that done, we'll kind of know where we're at, and then we'll go forward from that point. We'll keep you informed as when we're actually going to actually pull the trigger on this thing. So, is there any questions?
Yes, Councilor Staggers.
Yeah, Jeanne, what's a POS?
Preliminary offering statement.
Okay. And then also, what's the going rate right now?
Indications are somewhere between 470 and 5 would be what we'd be looking at. This will be a 20-year bond. The yield curve has developed a little bit more of a slope over the last couple of months, so the long end has gone up a little bit, but the short end is looking good. So it should be in that range, but as I say, we have these things out there that the marketplace is reacting to, primarily the subprime lending. I don't know if you saw it today, but Citigroup announced that their earnings are going to be down 60% because of subprime lending. Well, you start things like that make the market go nuts, but then at the same time the market went over 14,000 today. The Dow Jones did. It looks like probably what's happened is the market's discounted already the subprime lending issue, and that, frankly, that's good news. If that's already been discounted into the market, that's good. We know where we're at. Because frankly, the market didn't react all that much today. Like I say, the Dow Jones went up over 14,000. I don't know if it's still there or not. Okay, taking a look at the financial statement. Again, there's not a whole lot to report on the financial statements alone. I want to point out a couple of things to you. But this month, what we've done primarily is we put together the financial statements, and we've taken out in here in the funding areas the trust funds for the retirement plans. The reason we've done that is these particular funds are not available to the city for any kind of use. Even if the city got in a financial jam, you could not use that money to correct anything. And the other thing is these funds are very long-term oriented. So the investing that's done in these funds, you really don't look at month-to-month activity in it. It's got much more of a 5 to 10 year window, possibly even longer than that in some cases. So looking at those really does not tell you much about what's going on in the city. We've added some additional information of other funds, the other governmental funds and the internal service funds. The other governmental funds, let's go back to, I'm going to bounce around here a little bit on you. We actually started on page 17, and you've been seeing these for the last few months. On page 17 is a summary of the general fund by itself, and it's showing on there the ratios that we have want to keep at year end and where our cash position's at during the year. We're still at right now looking at the year end number for the general fund to come in at 27.4%, which is what the budget was. Our cash position right now, which because of the time of the year, we're looking at 22% against our target of 12%. But there's a summary of the general fund. Then the other one on the next page, on page 18, that is of importance. And again, so you have something at the top to really show you a small summary, and something just to quickly look at is the second penny tax. And again, the second penny tax, you can see we have unrestricted cash balances of $22 million at the end of October, or at the end of August. So we're hoping to go through these in more detail at a later date with you, probably with the fiscal committee. If you go to page 19, then we have one now where we summarize the utilities, essentially the enterprise, well, it is the enterprise funds. And the difference between the enterprise funds and the other funds, particularly the general fund and the second penny tax fund, in the enterprise funds, cash is really the name of the game, as opposed to whether you're making the budget or not. Are we generating the cash that we need to generate to pay our operating costs and to pay our debt service and things of that nature? So the enterprise funds focus much more on the cash situation of those funds. And now we've added, and the next page, after page 19, it's not numbered, a compilation of all of the other funds that we have in the city. And again, a real brief summary of how each fund is doing. But you have the budget, the adjusted budget. The actual is the year-to-date number for that fund. And then you have a percent of the budget that is spent or encumbered, and then the indication of whether you're over or under budget. Again, we're having the same issues here that we've talked about before. We have a 1/12 year budgeting routine, and so when you look at the entertainment tax fund, it looks like it's like we're behind quite a ways, but that is just the total change or the total expenditures for the fund, and we still should be okay there. So you have each one of the funds going down from here: the Railroad Relocation Fund, the Community Development Fund, Transit System. To give you a sense of where they're at, and you flip over to the next page, we have a little Library Memorial Fund. These are all just little funds that we have. Some are bigger than others, but it's a little easier way of looking at it, and I think a little more concise than what we've done in the past as far as looking at individual funds. The big thing that we have so far this year, if you look at, back up again and look at page, I didn't put my tag on there, the sales tax page. Page 4. You can see for August, year-to-date, we were up 7.4%. I have the results for September. That number went from 7.4% year-to-date in August to 6.3% year-to-date in September. So, we're experiencing what we've continued to experience, that number keeps bouncing around on us. One of the good things, I think I said something about this in an earlier meeting at the League of Municipal League meetings this week. They have invited somebody from the Revenue Office to spend, I don't know if it's 1 or 2 hours with the people there to try and explain how this sales tax flows down to the cities and that, and see if we can get some understanding of why this thing gyrates around a lot. So I hope that that actually happens. Then, one other thing I'd like to point out to you that came up this month, if you go to page 10, go down probably 3/4 of the way down the page, and you'll see an item in the right-hand column for $653. And it's got earmuffs around it, which is not good. Essentially what that says is we overran a project by $653. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, and it's not. The transaction that actually was involved that triggered that was a little over $10,000. The issue is that it happened at all. This should not have happened. We found a weakness in our system that we're going to correct. We have got it corrected already, and it comes from an internal function. What the particular item that pushed this over was an invoice that came through at the end of the month from the light department into this project, and it had not been encumbered, and that was a practice. They did not encumber it. They did not keep it on one of their spreadsheets, and we had no way of catching it until it already had gone through the system, and the month had been closed. That's all being changed now. It'll be encumbered up front rather than on the back end. So it can't happen again. It was some light poles that went out on the project, and like I say, it popped it over. What should have been done is that before that could pop over like that, the process should have been stopped, and we identify the additional money that we would need. In this case, it's $653. Like I say, that's not a lot, but that's not the issue. The issue is that it happened, and we have plugged that particular hole in the system to make sure that we don't have that kind of event happen again. We're always looking for areas where we might possibly have an issue. No accounting system is perfect and thorough and bulletproof, so all we can do is keep looking at it closely and analyzing it, and like I say, this one we caught, it slipped through the system, but this particular one will not happen again. So with that, concludes my comments.
Councilor Kavanaugh.
Looks like page 13 would be the other capital expenditures program fund. Several of those have negative balances.
They run a little differently because they really aren't appropriated by individual projects, but in the total, you'll see that none of the totals have overruns, the subtotals. So you can get things moving around quite a little in the OSEP section. It is handled more differently than the projects.
Does the plan not include a specific line items by department?
It does, but we don't know at the time what their bids are going to be. Sometimes certain things that were line items don't get used, and the money is transferred to something else. There's a lot more movement in the OSEP operation than there is in the actual CIP projects.
So to cover those shortfalls, you would transfer money from where?
From another line item that would be in here, it'd be within their department.
Within the OSEP budget plan.
Yep. No, we're not moving. That's what I say. You look at the subtotals. There's nothing on the subtotals that's got earmuffs around it, and they can do it within their departments. If Parks wants to buy a different lawn more than what they had in the plan, we don't stop them from doing that.
Councilor Liz. Excuse me.
Hi, Jeanne. Say, I was looking at page 16, And the entertainment tax fund there, the part about the partial refunding for the 1993 entertainment bonds, the ones that are at 3% that mature in 2008, and it's $5,400,000. When that is paid off, I'm assuming that the tax money is still going to be coming in. Will that tax money be applied towards the amount above that for the 2001B entertainment sales tax?
Yeah, we did a forecast for you of what it could be, yes. We had a forecast in here a month or so ago of looking out about close to 10 years on the entertainment tax. It wouldn't necessarily apply that money back up against what you're referring to here. There's nothing that stops us from doing it either.
I see the 2001B, that had like a 3.8 to a 550. Is that like a adjustable rate on the bond? Or
what they are is what's referred to as serial bonds. So you have a small amount of bonds on the short end, or you have a small amount of bonds maturing each year, and the short end gets a better deal at 380, whatever it was, and the long ones get 5-something. When we did the Lewis and Clark deal, they were the same way. There was a whole ladder of bonds, but the rate came out at, what did they say, 474 or something like that. When you put it all together, the overall rate was 474. But if you looked at it, the 30-year bonds were out there at 5.5 or something like that.
But I see in 2004 they locked in at 3%. Was that an average, or was that a fixed type of situation?
That I can't. They're all fixed. We don't do anything with floating. Okay. But that one's probably a flat serial bond of some sort.
There was also one other thing that kind of captured my imagination down here on Capital Leases, the Thury land at Falls Park. I guess I'd never heard of that and didn't know what the Thury land was. The Thury land under Capital Leases.
Okay, yes. We have, if you know where the recycling plant is up there, there's like 2 pieces of property in there, and I don't know all the details on it, but they were purchased by the city to go into Falls Park on a 3-year contract for deed, and we have to treat that as a capital lease for accounting purposes. So, but there's 2 pieces of land that was purchased up there for $50,000 or something like that.
Are they the land? Would it be the land that's just to the west of Unit Can Company, bumped up against the railroad tracks? Do you think?
You shouldn't have asked me. Maybe. Okay. You know Mr. Cooper? I'll bet you he probably knows exactly which one. I thought it was to the north. But.
It's to the east of the park, the new park shop. The vacant lot east of the new park shop.
East
west
of
Silver Moon Park.
West of Silver Moon. I don't know where Silver Moon is. But.
Any other questions on the financial report? Councilor Costello.
Jeanne, you mentioned, are you going to Aberdeen to sit down in that meeting on how the sales tax is, or is Tom? Or
I've sent one of my worthy assistants to go up there and gather all the knowledge he could possibly get his hands on. Tom will be there.
Okay, thank
you. Any other questions on the financial report? Jeanne, thank you very much for giving us an update on our money situation. Also, I'm sorry, I should have said during the open discussion that, of course, the City Council really enjoyed the tour of the landfill last Monday. I thought it was just very informative, and so we would like to thank Jason Kahn and our bus driver and other people who were involved in making that tour available for us. And we, of course, wish Jason the very best as he begins a new chapter in his life in Kansas in the near future. We will miss him, and we thank him for his efforts. And then as far as parks is concerned, late last night I was reading the new National Geographic magazine with the ear of corn on the front of it, and the only reason I bring it to your attention is there's a beautiful 2-page photograph of some ducks in Tut Hill Park here in Sioux Falls. And it's, anyway, I just have to tell you it's really quite the spread here in the new National Geographic. So anyway, with that, we will adjourn our meeting until 7 p.m. tonight unless you have anything else. Okay, we'll see you at 7.